Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Debate. This is week 3. Checking in with you all. We have a couple of things to talk about for this week. Last week, week 2, there was nothing due, so as long as you're keeping up with the reading and watching the videos, you should be good to go there. I think the last week was a pretty light week. This week won't be too terrible, but this will really start where we begin to build to a debate. So I want to kind of highlight that. Also, let me just shrink myself here. Let me find this. Okay, so the schedule for this week. We're going to talk about argumentation and rebuttal and persuasion in just a second. But do note that your quiz number 1 is due. That's on the Blackboard site. Let's just take a look so we all are on the same page as to where on the Blackboard site that is. Okay, we're going to come back and look at this stuff in just a couple of minutes. So if you go in to our site, you'll see it under assignments, and there will be your quizzes. So don't forget to do that. Also, things that you'll need to do this week will be your speech lab tour. All of that, all of those issues have been worked out now with the speech lab scheduling system. So I put up a video also on our Blackboard page that will walk you through how to make an appointment. So you can definitely get on and do that. I want to make sure that it's here. Aha. So that will be up right now, as a matter of fact. Let's do that now. Speech lab delay fix. Here we go. You are now clear to schedule your speech lab tour. Use this video to help set up the appointment. Really quickly go to the Speech Lab website. So some of this is in the video, but while we're here, Speech Lab, gvsu.edu/speechlab. Maybe, if it will cooperate. Here we go. And then this how to use Book It. This will take you to the video on how to use Book It. So let me go ahead and grab this, copy the link. I think this is strange, and you have to do it like this. You have to actually go put the link in. And we should be all set. All right. So now you can watch that, go do your speech lab tour, and you see where the quiz is. Enough of that for now. Let's get back to it. So the information for this week is chapter 6 and 7. Chapter 6 is all about creating an argument and responding to an argument. Chapter 7's about persuasion and what it is and how to perform it, because that's very important, which we'll talk about shortly. Let's go ahead and start with chapter 6 and think a little bit about what is argumentation. While this word argumentation seems formal, and it can be, it doesn't have to be. So I want you to just look at these potential definitions. So 1, the action or process of systematic reasoning in support of an action, idea, or theory. This isn't, it sounds really, complex, but it's not. Again, when we first talked via video, I told you that you have a debate with yourself every morning about, do I get up or do I hit the snooze button? And this is the same sort of extension of that. So if you are now using systematic reasoning in support of either getting up or hitting the snooze button, you're engaging in argumentation. So systematic reasoning is the important thing here, and we're going to come to that, as you see, in just a moment. But it is just a step further than, oh no, I don't want to do this, I'm just going to hit the button, or gosh, I guess I should get up, whatever. And then you get up. It's thinking things through a little further. Now, you could call it reaching conclusions through reasoning, that kind of thing. But it's what's missing in our world for a lot of people. They'll have a sort of base instinct as to what they should do or shouldn't do, and that's what they act on, which isn't always bad, but it doesn't partner with the logical reasoning all the time. And so we want to make sure that even if we think we know what the right thing to do is, think it through before we act. And with debate, whether that's a formal or informal setting, you definitely want to not just respond to something without having carefully thought through, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves ahead. So if I say something, what will the response likely be, and how will I respond, and what will that mean? It's important that you do this. So for you, going back to the getting up example, it could be as simple as, okay, what time is it? It's 8. I have to be in class at 9. How long will it take me to get ready? Well, I took a shower last night, so I don't have to do that this morning. Do I have clean clothes? Yeah, I know these things are clean. So now I'm reducing the amount of time it will take for me to get ready to leave. And so maybe I can justify through systematic reasoning, I can support the action of hitting the snooze. Or maybe I think to myself, oh yeah, I should have taken a shower last night, but I did not. I don't really even know where my clothes are, if they're in the dryer, or if my roommate took them out and threw them on the shelf. I don't know. I need to look for those. And so now I can justify through systematic reasoning, I can support getting up because I need to go ahead and start getting ready. So again, this isn't as complex as it can be. Sure, this might be a juror making a decision in a life or death case, and they're using the same process you would use to decide if you want to get out of bed or not. And you think about it that way, it really sort of paints the picture of how, minor this might be versus how serious and major this might be. So we use the same process, but sometimes the stakes are a little higher. Now, if we think about applying this to like the election year that we're in, some voters will just vote on a knee-jerk reaction. So, oh, well, I'm a liberal, so I will vote for someone closer to where I see myself. Oh, I'm a conservative, I'll vote on this side. Republican, Democrat, that kind of thing. Now, when you think about reasoning from low information or high information positions, this is when the voter at least applies some reasoning to their decision making. Maybe they are a single issue voter, and you see that there, and that person really cares about one particular thing. You'll see this a lot with, for example, reproductive rights, abortion, that kind of thing. Some folks will say explicitly, I don't like particularly Donald Trump. I don't like what he does, what he stands for. The Republican Party seems to be the party of Trump, but I'm still going to vote for them, even though I don't like them at all, because they support life. And, you'll hear that. That's a single issue voter reasoning from low information. Now, hear me on this. That doesn't mean that that person is dumb or doesn't have access to information. It just means that they're making a decision based on a very small, relatively speaking. I mean, if you can make the argument that that's a huge issue, and you could do that with any issue, but you're doing it from a single spot instead of this high information or multiple issue vote, where the person may say, okay, well, I don't really love either party, I don't love either candidate, but this person is more in line with where I am, so I'm going to vote for them, even though we're not a perfect match. I'm a 30% match with this person and a 60% match with this person. I'm going with the 60%. Now, what I've got next on here is manipulable. I know that's a strange word. You're able to be manipulated versus awareness. When you are a single issue or low information decision maker, you are putting yourself at a dangerous position. You're putting yourself at risk to be manipulated. And that doesn't have to be, the life example. It could be someone, let's say it's on the left, someone who wants very strict gun control. That's their single issue is gun control. They want to repeal the Second Amendment, let's say. And with any of these single issues, whether it's left, right, the candidate can easily say, "Oh, have no doubt, I will reverse Roe v. Wade." Great, that's who I'm voting for. Or, have no doubt, I'm taking these assault weapons and semi-automatic weapons off the streets, and we're going to really rethink the way we look at the Second Amendment. Okay, great, I'm voting for you. But if that's all that you're looking at, this single issue, you're likely to be bamboozled. You're likely to be fooled, tricked, because let's face it, people have been saying they're going to repeal Roe v. Wade forever, and they can't even do that. That's the Supreme Court, and it's still in place. People have been saying they're going to do some really good gun control acts forever, and they haven't. Right? We still have, lots of freedom when it comes to buying firearms. So when you put yourself in a broader stance, though, where you look at things more holistically or raise your awareness of what's happening and what's the likelihood of this promise being kept, or you're bringing yourself up from a single level to multiple levels, multiple issues, you're more likely to be happy with the outcome. You'll see some folks that vote Democrat one time, Republican the next time, Democrat one time, Republican next time, because they buy into, oh, they said they were going to do X, so I went with them. They didn't do it. So now I'm going to switch. They said they were going to do X. Oh, they didn't do it. I'm going to switch. I can't imagine living my political life that way, but to each their own. Now, the core here of argumentation is reasoning. And so it's making sense of things through logic. Again, this can be super simple, or it can be extremely, sort of advanced. What we'll talk about here through reasoning is that when we use our reasoning, we use it in a couple different ways. We could either use it from what's called a schema, I guess, the model, or based on a new experience, a novel model. So a schema is your script in your head based on your own experience and expectations of what will happen in a situation. So let me give you an example we can probably all relate to. So if you have been to a job interview, it doesn't matter where it's at. It could be at McDonald's or a super prestigious place. You probably have an image in your mind of what it will be like. Now, it doesn't mean that it will be like that, but you have an image of what it will be. There's a guy named Jim Honeycutt who does what's called the imagined interaction theory. And I know I do this. I imagine many of us do. But if we have something to do the next day that's sort of a big deal, and that could be personal, like a job interview or a first date. It could be professional, like a big presentation, or you're going in to ask for a promotion. It could be a variety of things. The day before, you will go through what might happen. Oh, well, I bet what's going to happen. I'm going to walk in and they're going to be there, and I'm going to say the thing, and they're going to say the thing. And now if they say that, I'm going to say this. And if they say the other thing, I'll say this other thing. And we like to plan it out. Some people, me, really do it in depth and like to have a plan. So I feel like if I go in to a situation, whatever it might be, I like to have at least 10 things that they might say to me first, and then I have a response for all 10 of those. Now, some people do it formally like that. Some people don't. Some people will just think, man, it's going to be kind of nuts in there if they ask me that. Yeah, that's okay. But sometimes that's all it takes, right? You can go in and you'll be ready for it because you have a schema set up for what that might be like. Now, on the other hand, a novel model or a new experience model is a completely different beast. You don't have a schema. You might have an imagined schema, or you may likely do some research to see what to expect. So if it's your very first job interview, you can talk to your friends. When I say research, I don't mean, journal articles. I mean, talk to your friends. Hey, you went to a job interview. What was it like? Talk to a parent, a mentor, whoever you got, and sort of get their input for what to expect. And it might match or it may not. But you're still coming into it relatively blind from your own experience. So for me right now, I mentioned somewhere that I'm teaching one class at Harvard, and it's interesting because I've taught college classes before, and it's like, oh well, you shouldn't treat them different because they go to school at Harvard. No, I get that, but what they've got me doing some of the time is working with third through fifth graders in China on public speaking. These are like the super gifted. They're going to graduate college when they're 14 kids, right? Um, and so I have no schema for that. None, zero. I mean, nothing. So, I've talked to people, well, what's it like to teach kids? Well, they can tell me some things and I can get an idea. Okay, have you ever taught Chinese children? No, no, I haven't. I can talk to someone else. Hey, you've worked with Chinese students like at college. Yeah. So what's it like? What's the cultural difference? Here they are. But not children and Chinese. And again, not saying all Chinese are the same. It's just the cultural structure that I'm looking for. But then you throw in the super gifted. Oh, by the way, all their parents are literally billionaires. Yeah, their parents don't come with them. Um, their live-in tutor. Do you hear me? A live-in tutor is there with them in the room, and they're not in their bedroom or their kitchen. They're in their study, right? Not your dad's study that some well-to-do folks have, but I mean this is my study. This is my guitar center here in my man cave basement. But they've got their own room just for taking this class. It's completely different than anything I've ever experienced. And so that would be something that I don't have a schema for, and I have to just do my best. And it's a challenge. Now, related to those two, you've got what you see there is sequence versus non sequitur. Non sequitur just means does not follow. So, in a job interview, for example, if you came to the speech lab because you had an interview of some sort, I could give you some pointers. Part of what I would tell you, regardless of what you're interviewing for, if it's a job, grad school, whatever, is be ready to, one, talk a lot about yourself. Two, you need to have some topics that you can go to if you don't know an answer. You can always talk about certain things like the importance of family. If it's grad school, the value of education. If it's work, the importance of a team in the workplace, that kind of stuff. So if you get a question that's like, for you, what's the most important element of starting your career and working here that you think you will learn the most from, right? Some off the wall question that you weren't really even prepared for or thinking of. You can just think teamwork. Okay. Well, I hope that I can work as part of a larger team where I will learn the blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm saying? My last thing I would tell you in this tips to be prepared for the interview is have questions prepared to ask them at the end. And so that would fit well with the sequence. That would be great, right? You can plan out this is likely what's going to happen. But a non sequitur or a does not follow is a completely, again, different situation. And when we think about applying reasoning to all this, it's fairly easy to reason when we have background knowledge, but it's harder when we don't. So with this non sequitur, I had a job interview once at Radford University, and they had a schedule that they sent me. This is what you're going to do. Now, this is like a 2-day interview where you got to meet folks and teach and do all this stuff. I'm in the first meeting, and right in the middle, somebody comes in. Hey, so and so, another professor, didn't. They're not going to be able to make it today. They're ill. So why don't you just go ahead and teach their class, and we'll put you right in. See what's going on. Okay, great. And then from there was someone in that lecture that was like, oh, let's go to lunch and talk about you. So things just got completely thrown out of order. And, it was tougher to adjust. Now I still got offered the job, which was cool, but you've got to be thinking in terms of, wait a minute, this doesn't follow the way I thought it would. Does that mean that it's not going to work? Because I could have thought, this place isn't very well organized. I don't want to work here. Or, you could look at it from a completely different angle. So with the reasoning, sometimes if things don't make sense, they don't logically follow in an order, you might decide, look, this must be wrong then. It's not logical. But sometimes things that are right aren't always exactly logical. So, what does that even mean? What is logic? That's the next item here. Logic is reaching a conclusion using a set of principles, usually of validity. So, another way to put it, as you can see on the examples, or I'm sorry, the definitions, stringing together ideas we know are true to conclude something else is true. So, the example there is if you drop a rock, it will fall directly to the ground. How do we know? I can make that claim that if I, have something in my hand, here's the pen, if I drop it, you heard it. It hit the floor. How did I know that was going to happen? Well, the simple answer is gravity, but you can see the more thought out example here. Well, gravity's real. It's the law of gravity, and it forces things down towards the ground. Some items, like feathers, if you let them go, they won't go directly to the ground. They'll kind of do the float, right? That's not a direct path. They'll go to the ground, but not directly. But this is not like a feather. This doesn't displace air in the same way. So when dropped, a rock doesn't behave like a feather. Therefore, the rock will fall directly to the ground, and it did. So again, two things to take from that. One is you really want to think about what do I know to be true, and then place this new sort of idea or judgment that you're making in the context of what you know is true. This is sort of, again, since we're in election season, the way you need to judge political candidates. So people will say, Joe Biden is not mentally capable of being president. He has, some sort of, dementia or whatnot. Okay, so what you can do, because we don't know if he has dementia. We can't see his medical records right now. Actually, we can, but we don't trust people, right? So maybe they're not real. Who knows? I think they are. But we could look at his behaviors in the context of what we know. Can we watch him give a speech? Yes. Does he do pretty well there? Yes. Does he have some screw ups? Yes. So let's stop there. He is known to stammer and stumble a little bit. Okay, so that could be a red flag. He sort of loses his spot. It looks like he sort of forgets what he was talking about. All right, now what we need to do is back up in his life and look at his track record. Has he always done that? Not as severely as he does now, but yeah, he has. He's known for gaffes. He had a stutter as a boy. So if we know these things to be true, that we can find out fairly easily looking at his history, we can then say, is that behavior, dementia, or is it just Joe being an older guy who's had some issues throughout his life? It's up to you to decide, but we can use logic that way. Same thing on the other side. People, some folks in my own family will say, Donald Trump's the greatest president ever. He's never lied to the American public. He's a good man. Okay, so we know that he's cheated on all of his wives. We know that he not only cheated on all of his wives, but the last known person he cheated with was Stormy, right? But wait for it. He cheated on Karen McDougal, his girlfriend, with Stormy. He was cheating on his wife with his girlfriend, Karen McDougal, right? There's layers to this. He's been, found that he can't run a charity anymore in the state of New York. He's been made to pay $25 million for fraud in the Trump University case. We know these things to be true. And so, can you think, well, that guy probably wouldn't tell a lie, or that guy probably would tell a lie, right? And then you can use logic and basic reasoning to get there. Now, it's not 100% accurate, this idea of argumentation, applying reasoning through logic. Again, we will find that there are exceptions to almost every rule. So what about this rebuttal? This is where you explore other alternatives. So what is a rebuttal? It's a refutation, a challenge of a conclusion, or more specifically, a part of the argument that you made to get to the conclusion. Of course, it's to say, I don't think you've reached the right conclusion, but it's more than that. It's to say, I don't think you've reached the correct conclusion, and I think here's where you went wrong in your thinking. So you might offer an alternative sort of approach So here's a different way to think about it. Here's a different possible outcome or a different process. So the example, a rock will fall directly to the ground if dropped. Generally, most people would agree with that, but we need to know some more information before we can definitively say a rock will fall directly to the ground. So, if you drop a rock on top of a mountain where the air is rushing up and that rock's light enough for that air to affect it, it's not going to fall straight to the ground, even though it is a rock. Now, if you're here in Allendale at sea level, it's a little different. Things usually go straight to the ground. What else might we know? Is the rock being dropped on Earth? It seems kind of course, and in most cases it will be, but it may not be. Maybe you're on the moon. Maybe there's a different field of gravity. From how high is the rock being dropped? Think about this one. I mean, if you're dropping it on the top of a mountain you're standing there dropping it to the peak, it's only still falling maybe a couple feet, but that updraft might move it. Whereas if you're on the, I don't know, let's say the top of, a skyscraper and you drop it off the side, it probably won't go straight down. It'll probably move with the wind. Again, if it's a massive boulder and you throw it, maybe it will go straight down. But if it's, a rock the size of your hand or smaller, it probably will be impacted and changed by the air. So while we can say this is probably right because we know some things to be true, we're going to apply those and make this conclusion, it's not foolproof, right? There are some exceptions to these rules. So let's put this into a big context because that's all for argumentation and rebuttal. But the idea here is debate is argumentation. Argumentation is what makes debate debate. It's not that complicated necessarily, though it can be. It can be as simple as, okay, what makes more sense for me to do? Get up now, stay in bed. We come to that conclusion through reasoning. We make sense out of things based on what's happened to us before, if we have the schema. So the last time I hit snooze, I overslept and missed class. I should probably go ahead and get up. Versus a brand new experience. The first time you've done something, you don't know what to expect or how it might go. So you don't have as solid a ground to make a conclusion on. And then last, what is logic? That's, again, applying things that you know to be true to a certain situation, putting it in context, and then reaching a likely conclusion, but it's not foolproof or perfect. Okay, so that is part 1 on week 3. That's chapter 6, argumentation and rebuttal. Coming up next, if you're watching in order, will be performing persuasion. So I'll see you there shortly.